Really kind of depends on which headline you want to read now, huh?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
So our original intent for our guest this evening was to discuss military and respect, and Senator John McCain having to battle from the next life, the President of the United States, who continues to get on him and talk about him in the present tense, which is kind of crazy. So we scheduled Reginald Centracchio for the program late last week for today. There's no sense not keeping him around because we've got new news. I'm sure he's got some thoughts on it. And usually some, I think, some pretty, is thoughtful thoughts redundant? Yes, but he'll be contemplative about this, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him about it. It's great to have you in. We will, over the course of this week, spend some more time talking about the Mueller report 4-page summary. I mean, you want to talk about a Cliff's Notes. It's a Cliff or Cliff's Notes? Is it plural or, I don't know. It's what you weren't supposed to use in college when you're writing a paper, but you definitely stole in high school. Anyway, 4 pages from the current Attorney General to summarize 600 plus or more of unread material by America. Okay. This is a very strange process, but we'll have more analysis on this. Professor Camerano from the Political Science Center, PC, will be here tomorrow, mostly because I want to hear what he thinks about what Congress's next step is, because the individual members of the House of Representatives right now, and some Democratic senators, are behaving in somewhat apoplectic fashion, and I don't think it's good for them to do that either. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and realize that we have 4 pages. Although the president, no doubt, has played this like it's game, set, match, and over, which you knew he was going to do. Here's a headline amongst so many. In fact, I was saying to Anita that I think we probably tomorrow have to assemble a dozen or so headlines from across the country, because depending on how you spin the headline, because nobody reads past the headlines in this country anymore, what happened there? No collusion, obstruction still an open issue. Other headlines, exoneration, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how deep the American public go on this whole thing. My guess is not very. Here's the latest that we had at midday.
No collusion, no obstruction.
A familiar message from President Trump as he left Mar-a-Lago on Sunday. But this time, he was backed up by Attorney General William Barr, who had just released a 4-page summary of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation.
It was a complete and total exoneration.
Barr wrote, the special counsel's investigation did not find the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with Russia in its efforts to influence the 2016 U.S. presidential election, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals. But it did not totally exonerate the president, as he claims. Dealing with possible obstruction of justice charges, the special counsel stated that while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. Barr says he and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, 2 Trump appointees, decided the evidence was not sufficient.
His conclusions raise more questions than the answer.
Democrats, like House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, are calling on Barr to release the full report and testify before Congress.
We cannot simply rely on what may be a hasty, partisan interpretation of the facts.
President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, spoke to CBS this morning.
For the Congress to go over all that again, to me, is a waste of money. It's political. Let's get on with the people's business.
Barr says he intends to release as much of the special counsel's report as he can.
What was your take, General?
Well,
welcome, by the way. Great to see you.
It's always good to be here. I think on the front end, we should all be thankful that there was no direct collusion, and the president wasn't obviously in a position, or any of his people in a position, to throw the country away. And having said that, I would like to have everybody understand that. Now, the rest of the story is yet to be told. Whether there's any additional considerations for obstruction of justice is yet to be determined. But I think the bottom line is the intent and purpose of that 2-year look at was to determine whether there was any collusion. And the best of my reading, there was not.
Well, it was intended to do a couple of things. It was intended to detail Russia's involvement in our elections, and we've had dozens of indictments and a handful of convictions along that line, and the ancillary information that came along with it, Manafort et al. Right. So that has been accomplished. Mm-hmm. That is part of the message here. Russia intervened in our election. That's indisputable. Correct?
Correct.
That's been prosecuted.
Correct, but there wasn't any cooperation.
There wasn't.
From the Trump
there wasn't any. There wasn't any.
Campaign.
So far, we can tell by the four-page letter that address and the 2 paragraphs that address this particular issue. What we see is that there was no prosecutorial criminal opportunity for the special prosecutor to lay out here. And I think that's really important as well. One of the things that prosecutors do is assess whether or not they can win a case. It doesn't mean that there wasn't bad acting. Inviting or hearing that you've got dirt on Hillary Clinton and you may be a foreign adversary and taking a meeting may not mean that you were actively involved in a conspiracy, but that's not good behavior.
Right. But as I said earlier, the main point, as I took from the report, was that there was no definite collusion either by Trump or his campaign. Now, as I also said, the rest of the story is yet to be told. Whatever else comes out of looking at those other ancillary things that you suggested, once again, is something we'll have to deal with over the next several months, if not years.
Yeah, I don't know. I am relieved that there is no prosecutorial winning evidence that Donald Trump was active as a Russian spy agent or the like. That seems to be the case. But his bold and China shop disposition was sloppy at best. And what's really going to be interesting is this whole suggestion that the obstruction of justice issue is an open-ended one. Barr says, look, I'm not recommending any prosecution here on a couple of levels. First of all, he can't indict a president. He's pretty sure on that. Secondly, if the underlying behavior, and collusion, by the way, is not the specific crime. The collusion is kind of an umbrella discussion of the specific crime. But if that is not prosecutable, that which you obstructed to hide that which is not prosecutable, for him is not prosecutable. So that's really that's
it is. It's rather complex. What was supposed to be a very simple, was there or wasn't there, has been accomplished. But the residual effects of the complexity of what we still have to deal with, all the things that you're pointing out, is yet to be told. And I think we'll probably experience this from all of the other investigations that are ongoing as we speak, beyond just the Mueller report. So there's a lot of things going on that will either refute that or make it substantial.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do want to get to the subject that we want to discuss. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the temperament, though, of the country and the fight to control the temperament of the country, which is furious from the White House right now. Stay with us.
I think Democrats and the liberal media should be absolutely embarrassed by their behavior over the last 2 years in their breathless reporting and their hope. It's not just that they reported and spread a slanderous, malicious lie, but they hoped for the takedown of the President of the United States. I think everybody in America should sit back and process that for just a second and realize the seriousness of the accusation that was put on this president, that the media perpetuated, that they celebrated, and they loved to report. 8,500 articles just between 4 outlets, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, and CNN, since May of 2017 have been put on this. That is outrageous, something that we found out to be a complete and utter lie.
What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's a defensive position, obviously. at best. But at the same time, you know, it's inviting, from my point of view, it's inviting further consideration for the whole thing. And as we talked earlier, there are a bunch of investigations still ongoing. I think taking a definitive point of view like that is not productive, because something else could obviously surface.
No, I mean, if that little speech this morning from Sarah Sanders doesn't fall into the category of doth protest too much, I don't know what does. But you know, but the president's presentation yesterday, this morning, talking about the people who did harm, perhaps treasonous harm, to the country, who were involved in some aspect of this investigation, none of which he names, all of whom he's ready to charge with treason but won't name. I mean, this is, the American public right now has got some digesting to do. So I was over in the gym this morning, and one guy is complaining about, you know, 4 pages and blah, blah, blah. And the other guy just says, you know, I don't like this guy, but we just got to live with him and go on.
Yeah.
That's that. And I thought, you know what? That guy probably is closer to the American public's general disposition. What do you think?
Well, you know, my experience and my acumen in reference to the president is basically more toward his role as the commander-in-chief versus the president of the United States. So I don't want to go heavily commenting on that aspect of it.
Right.
I want to be able to talk about
And we're going to in
my
our-
opinion
yes.
as it relates to his job as the commander-in-chief. However, saying that, I think you're right. You know, someone who looks at 4 pages of basically a 2-year report can't make a conclusion out of that. You have to wait and see what else comes out of it before we make any final decisions as to whether he, in fact, as the President of the United States, did anything wrong.
But I don't think the American public has the appetite. We live in a bumper sticker, soundbite, you know, quick hit, fast moving, texting, tweeting, Facebook posting world right now. You know, a 4-page summary. It'd be really interesting to see how many Americans over a week's period of time will actually read even the 4-page summary offered by the Attorney General. What's your guess on that? Dude, we're just talking shop here.
Yeah, I don't think they'll read it at all. I think what they do, in my opinion, is with today's social media, people read headlines.
Right.
And they make their conclusions
Which is
based
what my
upon
headline
how it's written.
Right, so Dallas Morning News, exoneration.
Yeah.
Well, that fits that marketplace, right? They're happy.
Exactly.
Another headline, nothing on this, open on that. But I think you're right.
Yeah, people, as I see it, not necessarily from a military point of view, but as a citizen of the United States and how I relate to what the media produces, when I look at a headline, I have a tendency to make a decision based upon that headline.
We all do.
I think that's
Yeah.
fair, and that's wrong.
Right.
When you read the rest of the story, then you find out maybe the headline was setting you up to have a conclusion before you even read the body of what the headline talks about. So I think most of the American people, unfortunately, and that's why we have an electoral college, I believe, which is another subject. I think people react to what is given to them just because it appears in the media, either social media or some other media. It's got to be factual and it's got to be correct. So I'll listen to what that headline says and I'll believe it, rather than look into the actual body of whatever the headline is.
Yeah, and I think, would you agree with me that the energy of the American public for this case is not high?
You're absolutely right.
It's not high, and so there won't be an urgency for, although Congress will do its job, maybe reluctantly. You know, the Nadlers of the world are there, and the Cicilinis of the world have been very active in this whole thing now. We'll be there pounding away and pounding away. And perhaps there's a righteousness about that because diligence is important. At the same time, I think they're doing it with their fingers and the toes crossed, thinking that really the answer is going to be 2020 and not pursuing investigations.
Well, I think
and they
you're
can
right.
lose 2020 if they keep
Exactly.
pursuing
You know,
investigations.
and I think you're right. My limited experience with running for office,
Right.
I in retrospect,
You got some votes.
yeah, I did.
You got some votes.
Not enough, but I
No.
did. In fact, you know, the people that I talked to now say, I voted for you. I should have won by a landslide.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. It is. But I think, you know, the point is people don't become engaged in much until 2 or 3 weeks out from whatever the decision is, such as 2020. I want to see a lot of stuff on both sides between now and then.
Right.
And over the next year or so, it's going to get really testy. When I ran for office, basically it had to do with Republican standards versus Democratic standard, whatever they stood for. And then that migrated basically to the issue. But the issue was based upon the interpretation by both those parties of what the issue was and how it meant something. Now, both those entities are going and we concentrate on the personal aspects of it, having nothing to do with politics other than to get elected or take someone out. And everything to do with a personal attack on each other.
Yeah, and or personas. And Donald Trump has changed the Republican Party based on his persona, because if you actually drew the lines as to what the party is supposed to stand for, half of what he talks about and stands for doesn't even correlate to those issues that you were probably strong on back in your day.
Exactly.
All right, when we come back, the original intent for the invite for the general was to talk about the president's rhetoric for John McCain. We'll discuss that when we come back. And then there's this stuff.
During a visit to a tank factory in Ohio yesterday, President Trump spent time praising its workers and once again criticizing the late Senator John McCain.
I've never liked him much. Hasn't been for me. McCain didn't get the job done for our great vets.
Now, friends and Republican allies of McCain, who died of brain cancer 7 months ago, are responding.
The president's comments about Senator McCain hurt him more than they hurt the legacy of Senator McCain.
On Twitter, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called McCain a rare patriot and genuine American hero. And Utah's Mitt Romney said he was honorable, self-effacing, and self-sacrificing. As the presidential motorcade passed by, protesters in Ohio said Mr. Trump's words were disparaging and untrue.
John McCain was a war hero and a great patriot that served his whole adult life.
McCain's daughter Megan, a co-host of ABC's The View, said attacking someone who is dead is a new low. And if her father knew what was going on, he'd think it was hilarious that the president is so jealous of him.
What's your take?
I'm disappointed that the commander-in-chief role that Mr. Trump has been tainted. My 48 years in the military, the span of 48 years, I've worked basically under 12 presidents. I've had the opportunity and personal pleasure of meeting 3 of those, and I've never ever heard anyone be disparaging or make any remarks to any military individual, such as we see over the last couple of months anyway. It's discouraging. It hurts the military. I don't think it has any place in trying to mingle politics, which is clearly the case here as I see it, with a personal attack on a veteran, and specifically Senator McCain. I knew Senator McCain personally. I continue to know Romney, and I've had the opportunity to be in the company of 3 different presidents. And each of those encounters, there was always a total respect for everyone having either served or currently serving. To say those kinds of things about Senator McCain is at best damaging to the morale and the well-being of the military. There's no place for that. When you try to enter into the conversation, the political aspects of why he said that has no place to be able to take a shot at Senator McCain and not declare that, say he wasn't a hero because he was a POW. He didn't decide to volunteer to be a POW. He was shot down, and he spent several years in Hanoi Hilton, and in my opinion, he was truly a hero. And when you take away that from the military in general, you're doing a lot of damage as to why troops serve to begin with. If they're unfortunate enough to be captured and serve as a POW, they are serving the United States. Not the way they intended to, but they are still heroes in my mind, and they need to be treated accordingly.
Yeah, this thing he's got for personal grudges. I mean, Senator McCain, as a senator, pretty much, by the way, telegraphed his Obamacare vote. I mean, for the most part, the overturn of Obamacare was something that he had concerns with on a bunch of different levels. This notion that it was last minute, pulled the string, the ripcord on the Republicans' chance to, do away with it is, I think it's laughable. I don't know. Does it make you worry about his comportment and his processing when, God forbid, we've got a moment here? We've got a big moment here for the president and the commander-in-chief to make a big decision about the use of our military. Or you think it's a weird personality trait? I only have a few minutes, but tell me what you think.
The thing is, when I was on active duty, there was a method and a process for me to voice my opinion or disagreement with even the President of the United States. Mm-hmm. It's called chain of command. Mm-hmm. When you're retired, there's no such thing. Mm. And therefore, what I'm speaking to you comes from my experience.
Right. It's personal. Right.
So yes, I do believe that there's a concern, as was the case when we saw for the very first time the Defense Secretary resigning. That's never happened before, because you have that kind of a concern that when a major decision is about to be made, do you have that kind of insurance to the families who have their loved ones on the front line? Is the right decision going to be made? And obviously there's concern there. If you treat our, and you say things like you did about our previous members of the military who unfortunately were POWs, that gives some concern that you hope there are enough people around the president, the commander-in-chief, to make sure the right decision is made.
It's like wait and see, but we really don't want to have to wait and see. World circumstances will dictate, I guess, and we shall see. Strange time, General.
It is, but we've seen worse times, and I'm sure we'll get through this. It's just a matter of how we negotiate as the American people through the next several years.
Yeah, I would say though the theme is pay attention and at least read the 4 pages, for crying out loud, right?
Yeah.
Do something to help yourselves.
And I think, if anything, if we avoid making a conclusion on headlines, that's a big step forward.
Yeah, there you go. That's the lesson learned today. Thank you as always, sir. When we come back, final word. I think the rhetorical challenge now for Congress is to be patient and not necessarily try to match soundbite for soundbite the President of the United States and the White House press secretary and other stalwarts who are going to not only do the I told you so, but also demand accountability from those who would even think of raising the question that there was something worth investigating. Congress is going to have some really, really deft things to have to deal with. And I remind you, the Southern District of New York, yeah, the Stormy Daniels stuff, especially since her former attorney, just got jammed up today, it's one thing. But there's more about the story that the Southern District has that might give us pause down the line. Anyway, we'll talk about it tomorrow and on the radio at 3 on WPRO. Thanks for watching. Good night.